Cheers, everybody. Welcome to the first ever edition of Bourbon on a Budget. If you're tuned in today, it's probably because you love bourbon. And if so, we're glad you found your way to us. I am TJ Pittenger, joined with a couple of great buddies of mine. Brendan Sonnone, who you guys know from a couple of other podcasts on the net right now. And my good buddy that I graduated high school with, Ben Koch. Yes, that really is his last name. Brendan, Ben, how are you gentlemen doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. This has been a podcast, a video episode, a platform for bourbon a long time in the making. We all like bourbon. We love bourbon. We love talking about bourbon with each other and other friends. So I'm excited, TJ, to get going on this and to open up the world of bourbon that we share together to listeners and friends.
Yeah, TJ, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about bourbon, hang out, and I've been doing this for a while, so might as well start sharing it with some people and have people join in with us.
Yeah, Ben and I were at Whiskey Cake today, which is a establishment here in Tampa. I know there are several of them, and Ben said, like, worst case scenario, if nobody ever watches this or nobody ever downloads it or never goes anywhere, like, we're just sitting around talking about bourbon and drinking bourbon together with cool guys, and like, that's good enough. Like, that's really okay. So hopefully it goes somewhere. Hopefully this is something that you guys enjoy. Not only you two that I'm talking with, but the folks that are tuned in and listening or watching. And so we're super excited about it and excited to be with you. Ben, I see you raising your glass right there. Let's go around the horn right now. What are we all drinking? Ben, you go first. On our first ever episode of Bourbon on a Budget, what do you got there?
Yeah, I'd hate to screw this up, but like you said earlier, we were at Whiskey Cake today, and so this is some coffee. I'm on the recovery cycle right now.
So our first ever drink that we talk about on Bourbon on a Budget is Ben's coffee. Ben makes a fantastic pour over coffee. He is as every bit as much of a coffee snob or a bourbon snob as he is a coffee snob. Brandon, what are you drinking?
Just water at the moment. I know that sounds pretty weak, but I want to go into this with my palate completely refined and open. My wife actually made me tea like an hour ago, and then I felt really bad that I decided not to drink it. So there's just tea sitting in the other room. I know that's not riveting, but I want to be fresh for you guys as we get into the bourbons.
Well, I am drinking a bourbon. So I've got an Old Forester single barrel, barrel select. It's a Burns Steakhouse establishment here in Tampa, the best steakhouse in the state of Florida. I've got their single barrel Old Forester pick. So cheers to me, I guess, as you guys drink coffee and water. All right, let's get into some stuff. Brendan, let's do a little intro for people so people learn a little bit more about us. I know that Brendan, you and I are kind of in some FSU circles, so people may know about us from there, but let's talk a little bourbon, right? Like what we're going to get into. Where did your bourbon journey start? How did you get into this magnificent world that is, corn-based whiskey?
I used to be in my group of friends, the guy who was made fun of for not drinking liquor. I would always drink beer, and that's all I would drink. And they would try to force me to drink SoCo and Sprite. And that was really the first time where, I know that sounds blasphemous, right? But that was really the first time where I realized, like, oh, this, mixed the right way could actually be pretty palatable. Like this is okay. That was about 3-4 years ago. And then that same group of friends, one of them was moving across the country, and my buddy bought him a nice bottle of Jack Daniel's. It was distiller edition though. And it was solid. It wasn't anything fancy, but I had that with Coke. And that was like, oh, this actually mixes well with Coke. And then pretty soon getting into like Four Roses, single barrel, and Jack Daniel, some other like nicer Jack Daniels, like Gentleman's Jack, you start realizing like this is actually pretty good and it doesn't need ice. Within a year of that, I probably had like 40 bottles of bourbon. I was hooked. I was into it. I was into the chase and the exploration of it and the hunting. And I think it's going to be a lot of what we talk about, here on Bourbon on a Budget is the chase and the pursuit of it. So yeah, man, that was really how I got into it. It happened pretty quickly. Went from the beer guy to the bourbon aficionado of my friend group.
Absolutely. Ben, what about you? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, I would say like Brendan, I started with beer. I really enjoyed getting in the craft beer scene, but at some point I was introduced to whiskey by my brother-in-law. Him and his brother every year would buy one nice bottle around Christmas time and then kind of drink that over the holiday season. And so when my sister ended up married into the family, I got kind of roped into sharing a bottle with the guys. And that kind of exposed me to some nicer bottles at the beginning. And so bourbon and drinking, nice whiskey has always been a communal act for me. An ability to share experiences and kind of just relax with good friends and good family. So that's kind of how I approached me drinking bourbon, more often at the house. It was always kind of with friends, with family to kind of relax, share stories, and kind of go from that way. So that's kind of how I got into the bourbon scene, and why it's so important to me is because it's all about community.
Yeah, no, Brendan, you talked about drinking beer, and my experience was not dissimilar. Were you drinking good beer, or was it just like cheap, like Miller Lite? Because I've got a path that's going to be similar, but your smile tells me that
It,
it
you know where
was.
it's going. It was cheap stuff, but I also had a reputation as not knowing what the hell I was ordering, even for beer. Like I was very, I don't want to say sheltered, but I didn't do a whole lot of like partying and stuff in college. I was tied up with a high school sweetheart, so I didn't do a whole lot of crazy stuff. So I would have like Bud Light and whatnot, and then as I became single, would start going out to bars and stuff more. I would like start ordering like IPA stuff, and I had no idea what I was ordering every time. It sounded good, and then I would drink it, and I couldn't transition to it. So eventually, though, I started getting a little classier with my beer taste. So I'm a little more sophisticated, if you will. It took some time, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we've all been there. Like, in college and really young, like I was just drinking, cheap crap, and um,
Natty Light.
as bad as the bottom of the barrel gets. And there's a time and a place for all of that, right? Like when I go over to Ben's house and I'm taking the kids in the pool, like I'm drinking Miller Lite out there, right? Like I'm not drinking an IPA or some bourbon finished in a rum barrel. So like I think there's a time and a place for everything. But yeah, I got really big into craft beer and have been really big into craft beer since I don't know 2013, 2014. So I was really big into that for 4 or 5 years, and then I just had a shelf full of well over 120, 130 bottles of craft beer just sitting out in my kind of cellar, my garage, whatever, collecting dust because, a 25-ounce bottle of beer, once you crack that, I mean, it's no good if you don't drink that night. And so I just had them sitting there collecting dust. I got into bourbon because Ben actually came over. I just looked up the date of it, but Ben came over to my house on April 18th of 2020. So pandemic has just started. Nothing's going on. Everything's shut down. We can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. And Ben brought over 4 different bottles, which we'll talk about those bottles in a later episode. But Ben brought over 4 different bottles and kind of told me what I should be tasting, what I should, maybe get off of each bottle. And a really just kind of good, unique experience. I think maybe even let me end up keeping one of the bottles or something,
Oh,
said like, oh, this is for you. And so at that point, that was what, 10 months ago now. I've bought way too much. I've tasted way too much. I've drank way too much. But I really enjoyed the journey. Ben and I drink a lot together. We graduated from high school together. Our families have known each other for a long time. And so, this pairing and this fit just kind of was natural. So excited uh, to go along this journey. I'm excited to hear from other people as well. We'll get like social medias and stuff going up very soon. It'll all be bourbon on a budget. You can search for, but I'm excited to hear other people's journeys. I think most people have a very similar journey into bourbon, but I'm always fascinated by it. I'm always Ben's with his family. Brendan just kind of growing up a little bit. Me getting introduced by it to it by a buddy is all kind of fascinating to me. So if you've got those stories you want to talk about, we're here for them. So send them in wherever we have places you can send them in. We don't have all the social media and stuff like ready to give to you, but just search Bourbon on a Budget and we'll talk about it. Comment it on YouTube. This will be on YouTube. Comment it below. Maybe that's the easiest way to say it.
we're working on it, people.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe,
Yeah. All of those things.
thumbs up.
Yeah. No thumbs downs. Go put that on all the other No, I'm just kidding. So Bourbon on a Budget, right? Like that's a little bit about us. It's a little bit about our bourbon journey, what brought us here. Brendan, you and I actually, Ben and I had a conversation about turning bourbon into content. Uh, and he kind of asked me, like, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever done this? And then literally the next day, Brendan texted me and we were talking about turning bourbon into content. And
Was
so
it literally a day later? That's crazy. I knew
it
it
was
was
the
recent. That's
day
awesome.
Yeah.
later.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, I said, man, let's just do it. Let's just do this. Brendan's on like 18 podcasts. I think I might be on like 17. So doing the podcast wasn't difficult by any means, but it was figuring out this subject matter and trying to get it rolling. So we all kind of chatted. We've been in a group message for a couple of weeks now, and we're super excited for this. But Brendan, what is Bourbon on a Budget? What are we doing here? What's the idea behind the show? What are we going to try and accomplish with this podcast / video / whatever the heck we're doing here today?
So at its most basic, talking about bourbon and our journeys and our experiences and pursuing it and tasting it, but really with the idea of bourbon on a budget is trying to determine value at bourbon, because I think all of us at different points in our journey have found certain bottles that we love at great prices, or bottles that we spent way too much on and regret. And it's something like almost everyone has to, as you start to collect it, you kind of fall into you have those pitfalls where you either spend too much on it or you find that budget that you love. And a lot of the premise of what I wanted to do and I've been thinking about for a long time with doing content around bourbon was that pursuit of finding like great value and what value means to me, what it means to other people. Obviously, that's obviously going to be all subjective to your own personal preferences and whatnot. But overall, I think there's a Venn diagram, a certain realm where like we can all, like most people agree, like Wild Turkey 101 is a good bourbon at a good value, or this bourbon here is too much money. And so that's really like the dialogue and the conversation, the jumping off point that I really had envisioned for us to be talking about. And that's not going to be all we talk about with the bourbon conversation, but that's maybe something that's going to be always kind of present with us, is like, we aren't millionaires. We have a certain budget for our bourbon collection, even if it grows too much for our spouse's liking, right? We can't go crazy on it. And so that's kind of like, what is value? What's worth your time and your pursuit?
Yeah. And I think that we've talked about this, like sticking in and around that budget. Brendan hit the nail on the head, right? Like if we had an unlimited budget and we were just absolute millionaires, yeah, we could review every single highly sought after bottle that has ever existed. And then we would not be able to relate to any of the people that are watching, right? It does us no good. My favorite thing about watching bourbon reviews and watching people talk about bourbon and talking about bourbon with people is kind of like Ben mentioned, that camaraderie, right? Like that enjoying that drink, whether it be a cheap Miller Lite or Pappy Van Winkle 23. Like it doesn't matter. Like I like to enjoy that drink with somebody. And so I think if all you're reviewing is this stuff that's like highly sought after and nobody's ever going to get, it's hard to relate with people. And so what I'm excited about this show is we are going to basically do one long episode a week that gets split up into two parts. And the first part of that episode, you're listening to it now, right? You're listening to our first episode's a little different, right? Intro, how we got here, what's going on. But the first part of the episode is our story, right? Like what's going on, our bourbon chat, right? What we're doing that week in bourbon, what's going on, what we've tried, what we've tasted. And then the second part is going to be a shorter episode that airs that truly is a review of a budget bourbon. We've got one picked out for tonight. You're watching this now. The review will drop in 2 days, right? So you're not going to get that right away. You got to come back and get it. But we're going to tell you what we're reviewing. And if you want to go get that budget bourbon and try it with us, we encourage you to do that. This isn't a plug for any certain bourbon yet. Hopefully those will come later. But we're excited to be able to try things and share things with you guys. And really, like you said, do it on a budget. Do it. Again, I would love to be able to review every highly sought after bottle that nobody can get their hands on. That'd be great for me, but I just don't know how good that would be for an audience or for people that we're trying to relate to. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be able to not only share that with these guys that I appreciate and like hanging out with and like spending time with, but the community and the brand that we'll build here as well. We've talked about that budget. Ben, what does that budget look like? From a dollars and cents perspective, what do you think makes sense? And what have we talked about that we're going to try and stick to for this budget review that we're doing?
Yeah, T, it's a great question. When we're talking about, in the early kind of conversations, coming up with, bourbon on a budget, in my head, bourbon on a budget means to me accessibility. And that's giving the opportunity for the everyman to go out, buy a bottle, try it with us, and let us kind of just sample it together, talk about what we taste, what we don't taste, what's good, what's not. So I think when we're talking about bourbon on a budget, what we're trying to do is probably stay to a price point that someone can go out and grab a bottle at their liquor store right now. They don't have to search out and try to get allocated whiskey. And I think that price point is pretty approachable, probably around the $30 to $35 a bottle mark. Now that's certainly not going to be you to go out and buy that every week. But hopefully you're not drinking, an entire bottle every week. But the price point is of $30. I think it's pretty reasonable for most of the people listening, and that's kind of where we're drawing our line. Hopefully around that $30 to $35 mark. So like I said, you guys can go out and grab it yourselves.
Yeah, no, I think that price point is perfect. There becomes a price point that's just too low, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm not saying we'll never review any of that, but I was in a restaurant the other night and they said, our house old fashioned is $7, and they told me what bourbon was in it, and I just said, I think I'm good. Like, I'll just pay the upcharge for something other than that, please. It was Valentine's Day. I just didn't want to cheat, drink really, really cheap bourbon and have a headache the next day. So I
Treat
did.
yourself, TJ. Treat
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. My wife's looking at me like, really? Like, you have to be that snob? Like, you can't just, and I was like, yeah, I have to be that snob. So anyway, yeah. And then I think there's a price point, not that we'll never review anything that's lower than 30 or anything that's higher than 35 or 40, but I think that that's kind of the idea, is what can the everyday person, people ask all the time. Brendan and I are in a couple of whiskey chats on Twitter. Brennan gets questions all the time on his blog that he runs. I'm new to bourbon. Where do I start? And you're not going to recommend a $3,000 bottle on the secondary market to somebody that's starting into bourbon, right? Like, you're going to try and recommend something that is good, but is also not going to break the bank. And I think that just like with beer, right? Like, you can buy the steel reserve of beers, and it is the most alcohol for the cheapest price point, but are they going to enjoy that, right? Like, you could suggest them the finest craft beer in all of Florida, but are they going to enjoy that startup? So I think it's the same thing here. And the same happens with wine, and the same happens with whiskey or any kind of liquor that you're on. You want something that's a good quality, but not going to break the bank. And I think anywhere from that $30 to $40 range is probably what you're looking at. So that's kind of the budget that we're going to stick within. Not that we'll never go outside of it, but that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. I want to get to this, and then we'll kind of wrap up this first part here shortly. But we have Ben has trademarked and copyrighted this already, so don't anybody try and steal it. Like, don't even look up the trademark; it's already done. We filed this with the federal government, and federal government's very quick to give those patents and stuff. So, like, don't even look. But pursuit and purchases, our first segment of the podcast, episode 1, segment 1, pursuit and purchases. Guys, what are you looking for right now? Like, are you pursuing anything? Is there anything you're like, we'll get into our review later, but like, is there anything that you want right now that you cannot find that you're looking for as far as your bourbon journey goes? Brendan?
Yeah, I'm on the hunt for one specific right now, and I've been on a bit of a splurge recently too, so I'm not going crazy looking for this one, but I'm looking for a smoke wagon, and specifically smoke wagons small batch. So I've gotten their straight one, which is okay. It's $30 and it's fine. And then the unfiltered one, which like I got for $85, which is fairly reasonable given what it's starting to go for now, and like that's becoming a super popular bourbon. This is the one that's kind of in the middle. I think it's supposed to be like in the $55 range. But I love the uncut unfiltered. It's one of the best bourbons I've tried in the past year. Have you guys tried that yet?
I've heard nothing but good things about it.
I'll have to share that with you sometime soon, and when we send down some samples down to Tampa, because it's really good, really rich, really robust. It's awesome. So the small batch is kind of the one in between, and that's considered probably like a comparable bang for your buck as the uncut, unfiltered one, but really elusive. Can't find it in Tallahassee. Sometimes in South Georgia, they'll get it in occasionally, but I'll probably have to look for that one like on Sealbacks or something online at some point.
Do they distribute to Florida? I thought they weren't distributing to Florida. Or are you guys trying to source that from out of state?
That could be why I haven't seen it in Tallahassee
Could
and why they only get it in South Georgia sometimes. That could be, it is. So we're, for people who aren't familiar with the geography of Tallahassee, like it's 30 minutes north and you're in South Georgia. And demographically, like it feels very like South Georgia-ish in this area too. But you go over the state line and all of a sudden the bourbon game changes drastically. For a while, the prices were a lot lower in Georgia. That's starting to kind of creep up a little bit, but the selection and what they get more allocated stuff too. So that's a fun, we do talk about the pursuit part of pursuit and purchases, patent pending. The pursuit in South Georgia is an extra fun part of the element to where I live.
Yeah, no, I've not had it, but I will be in Tallahassee on Saturday. So if you want to pour me a sample, supposing that a basketball game does not get canceled, I'll see you Saturday.
TJ, how many times have you been supposed to come up and we were going to hang out and have a bourbon outside, socially distanced and safe? It's been like what, 3 times now?
Yeah, like COVID just keeps canceling everything. So
yeah,
knock on wood that this game happens on Saturday. I'm really excited about it. Like my daughter, every time she sees the Seminole logo, she's like, oh, Seminole. So like, for those that aren't familiar, like FSU's basketball court has a massive Seminole head logo in the middle of it. And she'll flip out when she sees that, because when you're 2.5, everything is the coolest thing ever. So anyway, Ben, what are you, less about her, more about whiskey. Ben, what are you pursuing these days? What are you looking for?
So I'm on the hunt right now for a newer release of Wild Turkey. They recently came out with a Wild Turkey rare breed rye. I'm a big fan of the standard Wild Turkey rare breed. I think it's a great deal at $45 or had 116.8 proof. It's from a great distiller. So I know it was released, I think in 2000, I think it's 2020. I think it was last year release, and distribution is kind of getting up and running. I talked to a couple local stores today, and I think a couple of them received 2 or 3 bottles pretty recently, but of course they're all sold out. So I'm really trying to get my hands on a rare breed rye, mostly because I have a palate that really enjoys rye. Recent purchases include some Sazerac ryes from Buffalo Trace. I'm really excited about that. I was able to purchase 6. So
you had to think. You didn't want to say that. You were like,
purchase a couple.
He knew damn well what the number was.
Oh yeah,
well, it's hard to find, in Tampa. So I found some guy that was selling them pretty locally that were selling them at MSRP, and he had a pretty big supply. So I thought, might as well pull the trigger. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to pull the trigger on those and kind of just stock up for a bit.
Yeah, those Sazerac ryes are absolutely incredible. It's probably my favorite, just like everyday sipper that I have in my house. And if you can find it at MSRP, which is, certain places, certain prices, like in New Orleans or in Louisiana, it's a little cheaper, but everywhere else it's like $30. If you can find it, $35, it is absolutely something we will review on this show. It is one of my favorite everyday sippers. I'll cut to a picture right now when I edit this later, but Ben and I took our families to Disney, and we snuck some Sazerac rye in a baby bottle that you're all looking at now.
Yes.
So hopefully you guys get a kick out of that, but really, really good. We went left, we got the margaritas first, but then we sipped on Sazerac rye the rest of the day because Disney's prices are
out of the baby bottle.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't suck on the nipple, they just unscrewed the cap and drank it out of the side. I mean, it just looks like apple juice, but yeah, I mean,
I was thinking you guys were sucking on the nipple, honestly. Comedically is where I was kind of hoping that the direction it was going.
Yes.
So baby bottle nipples are the hole in the nipple is so small.
Is this like personal experience, or how can you confirm this?
We both have children. Like the baby bottle
can neither
nipple,
confirm or deny.
So they make the nipple like really, so the child doesn't like, drink too much and like choke. And so
I think we're gonna get explicit filter.
Yeah,
with the amount of times
TJ
that we
was
drop
very
a nipple
worried
on
about the
this,
explicit filter. And I don't even know what this is like.
this is
MA. This
NC-17,
is
yeah.
yes.
But anyway, it would take so much effort to drink rye out of a baby bottle. Like, is kind of where I'm trying to go here and keep it on the train, keep the train on the tracks. It would be more effort than it was worth. Like I would just go get a beer from Germany and Epcot and just call it a day. Like, but anyway.
All right, you did not drink rye whiskey out of a baby bottle nipple. Got it.
Confirmed,
All right.
yes.
All right,
Yeah.
confirmed. All right. Good. I'm glad we cleared it up.
So Sazerac Rye, really, really good purchase. I'll go to my pursuit. I am on the pursuit, and it's just kind of, again, I've been treating myself like Brennan has lately, and I guess I have no plans on slowing down. I had a Michter's Toasted Barrel Bourbon in, where did I go, Ben? Where? Savannah, Georgia.
I wasn't invited.
You did drive right by and didn't stop, so that's fun. So I had a Michter's Toasted Barrel Bourbon, which their last release of that was in 2018. So it's super hard to find now, right? Like it's hard to find things that are in a limited or special variety quality. Anyway, but then, you're trying to find things from 2 years ago. It's almost impossible. I was able to pick up a Michter's Toasted Barrel Rye not too long ago, which is also a barrel strength that is in Orlando, and I'm coming to get it in a week and a half. So I'm excited about that, but I am still looking for that bourbon. If I could find a bottle of that bourbon, I'd be super thrilled with it. My most recent purchase, which Ben jumped the gun a little bit, we were going to go back around the horn for this. We skipped Brendan, but my most recent
damn you, Ben.
Might be.
Most recent purchase was an Eagle Rare store pick from Lucan's, which is a local Tampa Bay area chain of liquor stores. For a pretty good price, $45. Not awful for a barrel pick. Was my most recent purchase. That was last week. Brendan, I'm sorry that Ben was so inconsiderate of your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
What was your most recent bourbon purchase?
It's okay. It's all right. It's fine. I see how you're acting, Ben, though.
Episode 1 already doing that,
Dynamic has been established. Real quick with the Eagle Rare store pick. So I've never done the store pick of Eagle Rare specifically. It is one of my favorite bourbons at the price if you can find it. I know Ben talked about availability and that's difficult, but have you tried it yet, TJ? I'm curious, if like the $15-$20 difference is quote unquote worth it for the Eagle Rare, because that can sometimes be a single barrel. What you get at normal offerings just not guaranteed.
Yeah, no, I haven't opened it yet. I do have a regular bottle of Eagle Rare that I am excited to try both of them back to back. And next
sounds like an episode. Sounds like content. All right,
for sure. And yeah, I'll just tell you, like, before I even try it, I doubt that it is worth the $15 difference of regular kind of MSRP. The availability of Eagle Rare probably means that I would have paid that little bit extra anyway, because it's not something you can kind of find all the time. Ben is like the Costco fiend, so we will learn that as time goes on in this podcast. But Ben's seen it like at Costco for like $25.
Yep.
Obviously, if you can find it there for that, buy as many as you can. Go back on multiple days if it's still there. But because it's so hard to find, I'm not anticipating that the $15 will be worth it from a flavor profile. Maybe it will, but from an availability standpoint, sometimes willing to pay a little bit more to get something. So that's kind of my take. But stay tuned, because we'll definitely be drinking that soon.
Well, it's a lot of the time that is what you're paying for with the store picks, right? Is if it's a heavily allocated or fairly allocated bottle, the availability, and they just call it a store pick, and they jack up the price a little bit. But I've had some from the Buffalo Trace, like a Buffalo Trace that was a store pick here in Tallahassee. It was really, really good. It was $15 more, so about what, like 25-30% more than you normally pay for a Buffalo Trace. But man, it was really good and it was worth it. So I guess that's something we'll probably explore during these episodes is risk versus reward with some of the store picks versus the regular offerings. But as far as my purchases are concerned, so the most recent one, I got it right down here, the Discovery series from Bardstown, it was the number 4, which people have been gushing about. So I got it. I opened it up on Valentine's Day. I got it from
Yes.
from Sealbacks. I treated myself much like TJ did. It was good. It was really, really, really good. I'm very interested in seeing how it opens up, I guess, and what it's going to turn into. But the initial pour, the neck pour, was pretty special. It was about $140, a little pricier. I'm not sure yet if like it was totally worth it, but you knew where your money went at least. Like it was good, pretty close to being special.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll mention this as well. Not the most recent. Well, the most recent. No, I'll take it back. I'm still going to mention this, but it's not like the most recent or anything. I tried birthday bourbon for the first time on Sunday. We went out after Valentine's Day dinner, and they had a 2018 birthday bourbon at the bar I went to. It was pretty pricey. It was 40. Well, I thought it was a good price based on what I've seen it at. It was $40 a pour for a full pour, which is the most I've ever paid for a single drink in my entire life. But I've been wanting to try both a 2018 and a 2020 birthday bourbon, which are the 2 years that my kids were born. That's how I justified it. My wife looked at me like I was crazy, which it probably was. But
a common theme, I think, that's starting to emerge is spouses looking at us.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
But I don't want to give like a review of that or talk about it, but that was kind of a cool purchase recently. Again, bourbon very much, Ben has mentioned this. I've mentioned this. Brendan popped open a special bottle on Valentine's Day. I drank a special pour that was kind of expensive because it reminded me of my daughter. Ben got into bourbon because of a family thing, right? Like his sister got married to a family that was into bourbon. And so it's a very, I don't know, is sentimental the right word? Like it's a very sentimental type thing, right? Like I wouldn't have just bought a birthday bourbon and spent $40 on one drink for the heck of it. Like the actual $15 pour that I had besides birthday, to me was better, right? But it was more personal to me. And so that's kind of what I do. Another thing that I do like about bourbon and kind of tying it all together is I was okay spending a little bit more because of, again, what it meant to me. Now I've tried it now, right? And I'm not gonna have any more kids in 2018, so I never have to pay that again. So, I'm good to go. If I just stop having kids, I'll stop having to spend money on this stuff. But anyway, I did get to try that a couple of days ago, and that was neat. We're kind of wrapping this up. We are gonna ask this, and then we'll move on. What is the worst bourbon purchase that you have made? All time, recently, I don't care. Just give us a bad, like an avoid purchase. Brendan, you go first.
This was a rookie mistake for me. Admittedly, it was within maybe 6 months to a year of really starting into the bourbon journey, more so the collecting aspect of it. And I'm going to throw out the name here. Everyone's going to know right away. Blanton's, right? It's synonymous with bourbon and considered like a higher end bourbon. And because of the marketing that the Buffalo Trace line has with the fancy bottle and the different tops where you could spell out Blanton's, it's considered like you need to collect it, right? It's part of your collection. If you have a bourbon collection, you have to have a bottle of Blanton's in it. Because it's harder to find, I was not able to find it here in Tallahassee. I was tipped off by someone on my message board about when I was traveling south one time, somewhere like off of I-10. I think it was maybe in Live Oak or Lake City, one or the other. I can't remember, but you had to go out to the back roads a little bit. They said, hey, this place always has Blanton's. You can go get it. It's a little bit pricier, but you're going to be assured of getting it. So I went there, kind of went off the beaten path to get it. Wasn't in a great area, but whatever. We go to some unsavory places sometimes for bourbon, right? That's part of the chase and the pursuit of it. Went in there. Blanton's was $130.
Woo!
In my mind, again, this is naive, Brendan, right? This is 6 months into the bourbon journey and the collecting. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever see this again. I've gone out of the way to get it. I bought it. I bought it at $130. To this day, it is the purchase that has pissed me off the most. And not that Blanton's bad by any means, but the hype that it gets, certainly you can argue like whether it's worth the hype. That price at $130 when it should be about like $55, $60, I think is the MSRP there. So going more than 100% over it. Yeah, that was one that angered me. I still have the bottle of Blanton's and It's one I almost have some resentment towards, honestly. I have a hard time drinking it.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get into talking some blends later. It's the coolest bottle on the market, but it is kind of overhyped as far as a bourbon, in my opinion. Some people love it. Some people think it's the greatest thing ever. So that is something that we'll also talk about. I may love something that Ben hates and Brendan thinks is mediocre, and it may go vice versa on something else that we all kind of have differing opinions on. Ben, have you made any bad purchases recently or ever, or are you just like a whiskey connoisseur that's never made a bad purchase?
No, certainly. I pride myself on bad purchases of bourbon. One mistake that I've walked into at least once or twice is buying on a short time frame. I talked earlier about trying to get into to bourbon with my in-laws, and it was one year where we were looking for a bottle of nice bourbon at the end of the year, ready for the holiday season, and we hadn't purchased it prior to December, which everyone and their mom is looking for nice bourbons around that time. And we ended up searching around to, I want to say like 4 or 5 different stores, just trying to find something that we hadn't tried before, something a little special, and one thing leads to another, and we're ended up buying, a bottle for $100 that should have been a bottle that we shouldn't have bought for $50. I don't want to like throw anybody under the bus, but it was way more than I should have spent, just because it was a short time frame. So if you're looking for something special, if you're trying to find something for that time of the year where you want to enjoy it with some good friends and good family, like I talked about, start searching early, and start looking at your local stores. They're going to have the best supply, and you're going to have the best opportunity to kind of create a relationship with those guys. And whenever they get something special in, similar to how TJ's looking for a Michter's Toasted Barrel or a Bardstown Chapter 4, they'll be able to let you know when it's coming in. So I think one of the worst purchases you can make in bourbon is on a short time frame with a big budget.
Yeah, when you're kind of in a time crunch, and so you
Yeah.
actively overpay for something. Yeah, mine is pretty simple. Mine is not necessarily a time crunch, not necessarily you know, uh, spending too much. Mine is listening to the guys at my massive chain liquor store that I go into frequently to see if they have anything special on the shelf, and getting talked into buying a bourbon through them.
Yeah.
Be aware of that. And I'm not saying that everybody that works in a massive chain liquor store has evil intentions, but there are certainly things that they make higher markups on, and things that they will tell you, oh, this is almost as good as blends, or this is almost as good as Buffalo Trace, or this is almost as good as this, or that, and the other. It's for half the price, whatever. So I bought a $32 bottle of Graystown bourbon finished in port wine barrels. Ben, have I ever let you try that? It's not very good at all.
Hard pass.
It's not good. It wasn't super expensive, right? Like $32. It would be a reviewable thing. We can review it on here at some point, months and months down the road, but just didn't love it. And I kind of got trapped into like, the guys telling me, oh, this is a port wine finish. It's super smooth. And it just kind of, it tastes cheap. It doesn't taste very good. Nothing wrong with it. If you like it and you want it, let me know if you're in the Tampa Bay area and I'll bring it to you. But it wasn't the right bottle for me. And I just had money to spend and got kind of talked into it by the guy at my local massive chain liquor store. So be careful of that. Be wary of that. You can make some bad purchases that way. I'm thankful that the bottle wasn't a $60 or $70 bottle, because he's had me sold, and that was that.
I run away from those guys, like at the big box, when they come over to you, ask you if you need help. Like, I'm not trying to be an ass, but like, I know more than you probably about that.
Yeah.
How's that for snobby?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Every time now I'm just like, I'm good, thanks. Just look at, like, thank you very much,
But at the same time, like, there's some local places you go to and you really value someone's opinion. And I've had a couple people who I do locally value their opinions, but that takes a little bit of time to build that trust,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, Brendan, you had talked about earlier in the podcast, buying that, $45 Eagle Rare store pick versus $30, $35 Eagle Rare, at, a typical, big box store.
Mhm.
I think it's really good if you can find a local spot that is into bourbon, into whiskeys that you can kind of invest your time and money into. And if that includes, pay an extra, $5-10 for a bottle just to kind of support them as a store, I think that's really good kind of like long-term investing for your community. And it lets you just start a relationship. Those guys go out there, spend time picking out a barrel, having their kind of, logo and put their name on it to kind of market to the local, area. And like TJ had said, hey, you may be sold on, a bottle that doesn't make sense for you because it's kind of their highest profit margins. But these local stores who are, there, at least the ones that are going to be carrying good liquor, good whiskey and bourbon, they're there to kind of just service the community. And so the more that we can invest in our local communities, it's going to be, better long-term.
I agree with that completely. And I did not bring that up when I talked about when Brennan asked me if it was going to, I'm pointing because it's up there on the ledge, but I didn't bring that up when Brennan asked about it, but I can agree with that completely. Helping out my local liquor store is worth the extra $5-10 that I paid. Brennan, I totally cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. It was just on that topic with local liquor stores and having someone that you trust. Specifically, go back to the Eagle Rare conversation. The Buffalo Trace that I told you guys about in relation to that. I think so. It was the fifth time that this liquor store had a store pick for Buffalo Trace, and again, it was about $45. Normally, Buffalo Trace is going to be 25 to 30. But the clerk who worked there took me to the bar next door. They're adjacent to each other. They're connected. He poured me out some of the Buffalo Trace. I got to taste it and try it, and legitimately really liked it. It was a $45 bottle of bourbon. I knew I was getting my money's worth, but the fact that he recognized me, knew it was something I'd be interested in, was willing to pour it for me, no pressure. That's the kind of relationship you want to have with your local stores because it allows you to try stuff at a lower risk, I guess, or to even get tips for, hey, we have something cool and they think of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are wrapping up this part of the episode. Ben, I think you have the bottle with you, or Brendan may have it as well. So, but this was Ben's suggestion. I don't have the bottle. I have a little sample bottle from Ben's house. But Ben has the bottle. Ben, talk to us about this bottle. This was your pick. Talk to us about what we're reviewing. We're going to review it tonight, but it'll come out in 2 days. Talk to us about what we've got here coming up.
Yeah, I thought it was a great bottle to start off with. We're looking at Russel's Reserve 10-year. This is a product by Wild Turkey, introduced in 2000, and it's named after Jimmy and Eddie Russell, who are master distillers, father and son team at the Wild Turkey Distillery. I think they have about 100 years of experience distilling at that distillery. It's got a mash bill of 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. It's bottled at 90 proof, and it is one of the most affordable 10-year age statement bourbons on the market. Super affordable. It's going to be on at least every shelf of your typical local liquor store. Really accessible. Like I talked about, I want to have some bourbons that you guys can go and grab. So if you have the opportunity, go to a local store, grab a bottle of it, and we'll be reviewing that later this week.
Super excited to review that. Like I said, I've watched a lot of whiskey reviews, bourbon reviews, rye reviews, different things. And my favorite thing to do when I get a new bottle is to look up and find a review of that bottle and drink the bottle while I'm either reading that review, watching that review, listening to that review. Because I want to, my bourbon journey is young. It's 10 months. I'll admit that. A lot of people probably listen to that, have a more extensive knowledge than I even have. But I like hearing what some of those tasting notes, what some of those nose notes are, and things like that. So we'll talk about it in the follow up to this. But we've got a scale that Brendan's put together that he's used for a while, and I'm excited about rating Russel's Reserve. So a fun first episode. Did you guys have a good time? I had a good time. Hopefully,
a really good time. And I was just drinking water too. Wait till we get into the brown water. That's going to be amazing. Maybe
Time for
not.
bourbon.
Yeah. Well, Ben was into the brown water too, just not the right one. So, all right, cool. We'll see you guys in a couple of days. We're gonna review this. We're gonna get this going, and stay tuned. I'm excited to kind of go on this bourbon journey with you guys. This was a lot of fun for night one. I've been drinking, so maybe that's why I had fun. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did, but I had a good time tonight. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week or in a couple of days or whenever. And appreciate everybody's support.